This is MICK CRONIN'S chance for UCLA to go on a run during this part of the schedule. And the women continue to dominate.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Where we get started today, this is a great opportunity for UCLA MICK CRONIN to go on a run. All right, because there's still plenty of tough games remaining, many of them on the road, some of them on the neutral sites if you include the Big Ten tournament in Indianapolis. UCLA still has 3 trips to the state of Indiana to make, 2 trips if you include the Indiana-Illinois trip, back-to-back, right? They got a Purdue at Northwestern, they got an Illinois-Indiana trip, and then the Big Ten tournament to Indianapolis. UCLA is at home or on the West Coast firmly for the next few weeks, all right? And everything's been moving around, going pretty crazy right now. UCLA, this is their chance where I think whether they go 5-2, 6-1, or 7-0 is one thing, but this with a good 6-1 run, not only pretty much clinches a berth, but can put them into conversation back again as the top 25 team, top 20, dare I say top 15, when you got Michigan State, you got Penn State, and you've got, some good games coming up. You got an emotional rivalry game on a Monday night against USC, a very winnable road game against Washington. Not many Big Ten games are you going to be able to say you go on the road and you can win. UCLA lost at Maryland, and Maryland, as you would expect, opposite coast goes to Seattle. They lost against the Huskies. That's a travel loss for Maryland. While UCLA, they go up the coast. This is probably Washington, one of the better, easier teams in this conference, which is top to bottom of the 18 teams. Probably one of the easiest teams to beat, and they're still with the winning record, still a scrappy bunch, and UCLA had a scrap and claw to beat them the last time. Now, I think this Washington team matches up well with UCLA in terms of UCLA success, but if Washington comes out and plays much better, then, hey, we'll see how it goes. For the Huskies, though, they're 10-9. They have been struggling in these last few games. They're 10-9, 1-7 in Big Ten play, losers of 5 straight games. The thing that has killed this Husky squad this year for UCLA, for the UCLA teams about to play, they're pretty bad on the road. So if you take away their 5 losses, they're 10-4 in home and neutral site games. So 12 of the 19 they've played have been at home. They're 8-4. Some of those include wins over mid-major teams, a lot of which like the UMass Lowell, Seattle Pacifics of the world, only by 15. UCLA's already seen what they can bring, and they better win. Because right now, the best case scenario for a Washington win is just a quad 2 win if the Huskies play well down the stretch. Might even, dare I say, fall into a quad 3 win on the road. But this is one of those losable games that the Bruins have this as a blemish on their record. You don't really want this game as an ugly eyesore, all right? It can be forgiven to go to Rutgers, all right? They got 2 potential lottery picks. You hear that, the committee hears that, they're going to give more leeway if you lose across the country at Rutgers in a conference game. You go to Washington, a team who UCLA's already beaten, you go on the road. Yes, conference matchups when you play home and homes don't always exactly go as they are planned, and UCLA can see a much closer game than expected. This game between these 2 teams was a 5-point game and a half, and the Bruins had to pull away a little bit later against the Huskies. They did, 69-58, when the Bruins played them in early December, a month and a half ago, closing it on 2 months ago. Now, UCLA, the win isn't going to boost the record. It's just going to boost the confidence, continue the streak, which would mean if they win this Washington game, they're heading into 3 straight wins on the West Coast with an extremely emotional rivalry game against USC on a Monday night of all nights. A Monday night at USC. It's not even a holiday Monday night. It's just a regular Monday night because it's the Big Ten. I think it is just an absolute travesty that UCLA USC is not on a weekend. A Sunday night could have done this justice on Peacock. I'm not sure why it's got to be on a Monday night for UCLA USC. That's just That doesn't work well for LA. That just doesn't work. A Thursday, maybe Friday, but a Monday night? I don't know. But that's many gripes you can have with the Big Ten scheduling and how it feels like you play 3 times a week, but you're going to end up playing the same amount of conference games. It just feels like a headache trying to understand, is this a Thursday, Saturday format? There's a lot of things you go about the Big Ten schedule. And UCLA got the short end of it when you think about how much travel they're going to do, which is why the chances now for UCLA to figure out the rotations. We'll talk about that in a moment. More UCLA Washington keys. But now with the Bruins, you play on the West Coast, you're like, hey, Washington represents a winnable game. USC coming up next. They've got wins against Nebraska on the road. They beat Illinois on the road. They're like, USC's starting to figure it out under their new head coach, Eric Musselman. Probably a little bit tougher game than one would have expected a couple weeks ago, especially prior to the Illinois game. Illinois win for USC, all on the road, might I add. Very tough road wins for the Trojans where UCLA couldn't go and win. So lurking is that trap game Monday. This is another trap game. You have to win one of these 2 games, and if you want the non-eyesore loss on your resume, then you definitely don't want to lose the Washington game. The Bruins should, in my mind, win these next 2 games, which would solidify a winning West Coast swing. All right, and we're not talking West Coast swing dances. We're talking West Coast swing with UCLA not having to travel. Can they play a Washington team that relies on a 6'9", 6'10" big man? Absolutely. It's a perfect matchup for UCLA to go put another 20-point beat down on somebody. Perfect time to flex the muscles if you're a Diamata. Perfect time to fill out the rotation. Hopefully get some of these youngsters and little used players some more playing time. But until then, UCLA's just got to win some games. Stack up the wins. Make sure you get to at least 20. And then that's probably enough with what the schedule they played in the Big Ten to put them in as an NCAA tournament team. Now, you don't want to stop there. That's the bare minimum for a team who I believe I talked about last year very recently in the Locked On UCLA podcast about on ESPN. They went analytics about this. UCLA is a team that's 75% in. Still work to do. Well, the work includes winning these games like the Washingtons and the USCs. And then beating Penn State, which is a very tough matchup, and hopefully winning one of those games against like a Michigan State that you have at home, which would be a tough game to win, but be very important for UCLA to build their resume going forward. Because now they've got some top wins, some quad 1 wins at home, neutral sites, road games. You mix all that in, the Bruins are building quite a resume. They need a signature win, and I'm not sure the Big Ten team has a signature team. I'm not sure if college basketball until John I. Broome for Auburn is healthy. Not sure they don't have a signature team. Could add Duke into that mix. UCLA is competitive. Despite all the negativity Cronin brought into his program, the UCLA team is good and is very capable of going in a tournament run. Now, they're equally as capable as going the opposite way and folding. But just looking at the guys, the heart and the energy, and you get the right matchup, they can play and they want to play for Cronin and play to win. That's just how it looks. It doesn't look like this team has given up on itself. It certainly has it with its back-to-back wins. Now they just got to stack them together and get the job done. Bruins, Huskies, some keys and notes. We'll talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. Therapy is a game changer. It can help manage stress, improve sleep, and communicate more effectively. And as long as you can find the right therapist and fitting sessions to a busy schedule can be a challenge, that's where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and more affordable. Because with Talkspace, signing up is simple. You can match up with a licensed therapist who fits your needs usually within 48 hours. The convenience between sessions of the comfort of your own home, messaging your therapist between appointments makes it all easy to stay in touch and get the mental health you need while Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans. And for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. That's huge. A $0 copay is huge when you're looking into these therapy sessions. It's never been easier to prioritize mental health. As a listener to this podcast, you can get $80 off your first month at Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege. Enter the promo code SPACE80 to match with a licensed therapist today. Go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege and enter promo code SPACE80 to get $80 off your first month and show your support for the show. That's Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege, promo code SPACE80. All right, let's go over some keys in this game. What happened and what went right for the Bruins when they played the Huskies the first time? This is one of 3 matchups, 3 that you get to play in rematches in the regular season. This doesn't include the Big Ten Conference tournament, where you'll most likely play a team for a second or, dare I say, third time. UCLA gets to play Washington, and I thought the benefit for UCLA this year, as tough as it is in the Big Ten, you get to play Oregon, Washington, and USC. Unfortunately, the Bruins don't get an early game against USC because it seems like the Trojans might be peaking at the right time for them, wrong time for UCLA. Oregon, they're pretty good. I don't know if they're overrated or underrated. They've got a lot of good wins on the resume. The Bruins already won in Eugene, but Washington, it's about as solid of a matchup. Best team UCLA could face to get 2 wins, hopefully easy wins in Big Ten play. Last time UCLA faced off against the great Osibor, his name, Great Osibor. He's the last couple of teams he's been on with Danny Sprinkle, the new Washington head coach, 2 NCAA tournaments, so no slight on him. He's a really good player. Had 14 points for Washington, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, but how UCLA flustered him was with their size, forcing him into 8 turnovers. So great was not so great. And then 4 of 11 shooting. So if he's shooting closer to 35% and turning it over 8 times individually while missing a bunch of free throws, UCLA probably had their way in this matchup. And it's quite the time to meet where if your best player is 6'9", 6'10", although Graham Ike really gave UCLA some fits with Gonzaga. He was dominating until the Bruins brought in Mata for a little bit in that game. He was absolutely handling the Bruins. UCLA, 3 weeks prior to that Ike matchup against the Huskies, Osibor had some trouble. They forced some turnovers. And now that Mata has showcased his potential, I wonder how the big man against a much smaller big man on the other side for Washington can handle this. And if this means more time for Kyle. Because Kyle with Osibor, that's more of a size. They're probably equal in size. Osibor, a better offensive player. That would be a fun defensive matchup to see between the uber athletic Kyle and the scorer in Osibor. While UCLA, we want to get Aday Mata more touches, more minutes, more anything basically, as he can continue to grow. And yes, well, that will show and prove to teams that he's going to get more minutes. He's not a secret weapon anymore. He's just something that has been waiting to be used as he's been working out all fall, all summer, now into the winter. And I think he was quoted after the postgame against Wisconsin as saying, yeah, I'm going to go work out right now. So he's putting in the work. This is the time to literally flex your muscle, like Mick Cronin was telling Mata to do for the UCLA fans in attendance at the preseason scrimmage. Can he do it now? Absolutely. Absolutely. This is the matchup to do it. Washington didn't shoot particularly well against the Bruins. UCLA didn't force a lot of turnovers in that game, according to their season average. They only forced 12 turnovers against the Huskies, but they kept them under 60. I would expect something similar, at least UCLA to hopefully win this game by 15, whether it's 72-57, maybe it's 80-64, 65. I don't expect Washington, unless they improve upon their woeful 3-point shooting. UCLA, they shot against UCLA last time. They're going to have a good day from Osibor, have the UCLA bigs be non-existent, even though in this game, UCLA, what happened? They used Mata for 14 minutes. He had 4 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 blocks in the first meeting between these two guys. Then you see William Kyle, who put in a couple minutes in this game against Washington the first time, 2 assists, a rebound, a steal, on the block. So what we saw there from Kyle and Mata in a very small sample size, when we weren't sure how they were going to do, or they weren't as important in the rotation yet, they were very good defensively and provided 6 rebounds for UCLA's 35. I expect a bigger impact, which can only grow the confidence of both of UCLA's true centers because they're not playing with one right now. They can go small, as we've seen with UCLA, but true success for this team against most Big Ten teams will not come when UCLA goes small. I will be frustrated if Cronin is reliant upon going small because he can. UCLA should go big, must go big or go home, right? There's no point in UCLA winning this game against Washington if they're just going to give Bilodeau the ball a bunch of times to score 30 points. He can. We'll get excited. I'll get hyped. but it doesn't mean much. We know Bilodeau can do what he can do. We know Daly can do what he can do. This is one of those games where maybe you mess around a little bit and force feed the big men, all right? See Kyle get some points down low, build his confidence on the offensive side of the game, offensive half, build up his defensive confidence like he had the game-winning block against Wisconsin, and see how Mata does going back up and down the court. Now, maybe the idea could be, hey, if you don't need to use those guys as much, especially Mata, save his minutes and utilize them more against USC when you got a couple of games and a lot of travel in between. Seattle's close compared to the rest of the Big Ten schools, but it's not exactly a 45-minute flight going up to the Pacific Northwest and back to play a road game, home game, right? Those games used to be 2 road games within an hour of each other and then fly back. Not 1 trip to Oregon, 1 trip to Washington, and 3 trips east. So load management is going to be a real thing for Cronin. So while I want him to go big, in his mind, he's thinking, how healthy is Mata? How healthy are some of these guys that are banged up, tired, maybe things it is he hasn't even talked about yet, building this winning mentality, this toughness. But he understands because he loves watching the NBA. He's a literal basketball man, Cronin, whatever you want to call it. How do you handle your roster with a team that is deep, doesn't always need to win by going big, but will against Big Ten teams? Load management. I don't want to say it. I want to see the big men play. But if we see less of Mata, I wonder if that's what's in the back of his mind, and he's saving Mata more for USC. Doesn't mean he won't play, but maybe he won't go play 25 minutes, even if he could or should. We'll find out more about that as that UCLA comes. We'll talk about that UCLA-Washington game with a post-game reaction right after the game. We'll talk about it after that game, late on a Friday night and all of that. Next, we're going to talk UCLA dominating Rutgers on the women's side because they continue to go after 20-0. Best ever start for a Big Ten women's basketball program. That includes the great Caitlin Clark. UCLA has had more weeks at number 1 than any team in the Big Ten's history. And here they are going after 20-0 potentially. With USC still a couple weeks away, how they dominate Rutgers, we all know her name. Lauren Betts. Attending NFL playoff games is an experience like none other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with the fans are unmatched, and I can remember the thrill of seeing my favorite team clinch playoffs live, and it's a memory I've never forget. Yeah, this year Game Time's making it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with these experiences when you use the feature Game Time Picks. Filters out the fluff. It shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you can focus on what really matters for us sports fans. It's being there. I've used Game Time Picks to go get tickets for some big-time West Coast matchups in the playoffs in Major League Baseball. I've seen them to go on the East Coast when I've been in New York and use Game Time Picks exclusively to get the best deals on the best tickets and the best prices. On-time ticket delivery, you can go check out what the lowest price guarantee they have with Game Time. And, hey, the super deal is one of the best values for those events. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, here we go. The UCLA women have been absolutely dominant, and this was a game I expected them to dominate. I expected UCLA to beat Baylor on Monday in the Coretta Scott King Classic. The Bruins did so, even though with the East Coast swing, 3 games on this East Coast trip. Baylor was a top 25 team. They beat them. They go play Rutgers in a true road game. UCLA in this game won it by 18, led and pretty much outscored the Scarlet Knights in 3 of the first 4 quarters. So by the time Rutgers was kind of scoring some points, UCLA's almost put 85 on them and won this game by 18. Another dominant display for a UCLA team that's looking forward to what was supposed to be a top-tier Big Ten tilt. Maryland had 1 loss, was a top 10, borderline, getting up to top 5 team. And we'll talk about that Maryland game in a moment, but it's not looking as juicy as initially advertised, myself, everyone else included, because of their couple of losses. But we look at this game, again, the story for what should be the National Player of the Year. All right, Wooden Award winner on the women's side. Any award given to National Players of the Year, maybe a Defensive Player of the Year. Lauren Betts, 25 points, 13 rebounds. She was a rebound and a block away in the last game against Baylor from a triple-double, all right, with blocks. With blocks. Normally get assists, you do all that. No, she almost had it with blocks, rebounds, and points last time. Here, I think she played even better, more efficiently when you look at the numbers. In less than 30 minutes played, 12 of 16. Such dominance in the paint, such grace when it comes to finishing near the basket. The ability where sometimes it just seems like an easy layup, other times the up and under move, using both hands, both sides of the glass. And UCLA did not see Betts go to the free throw line, which has been the one bugaboo for her this year. Got rebounds, had 7 offensive rebounds. Speak about dominating a game so much that you get your team 7 extra possessions. And it's not like she was playing patty cake with herself off the glass, right? It's not like she was missing it, getting it back like some of these players, regardless of who's playing for who, getting extra stats like they've done in the NBA before. No, she is so dominant. It's like, oh, if UCLA is not shooting the 3 ball as well, like they haven't necessarily in recent times, in this game, UCLA was 31%. That's not a great 3-point shooting percentage. They shot less than 50%. Lauren Betts helped UCLA get 23 second chance points. How? Because she had 7 offensive rebounds. Oh, by the way, 5 blocks, 2, and 1 turnover. So she earned 7 extra possessions. She stopped 5 Rutgers shots and was super efficient on her own right. She's accounting for what seems to be almost every UCLA possession, leading to a basket, earning them more chances with the ball, killing clock. And, if you want to go in the paint, you're not going to score those 29 minutes out of the 40 that Lauren Betts is in the paint. I know we want to look at the other star across town. She's great and all. But let's not forget about the former Stanford Cardinal turned UCLA Bruin, UCLA superstar. And you look at Stanford, they're looking on the outside of the NCAA tournament right now, the latest bracketology on the women's side. And, by the way, their best player is currently playing with UCLA. Maybe there's a transfer who went to USC. Cool. No, their best player is playing on UCLA, and they blew it. Thank you. Thank you, Vanderveer. Thank you. Thank you for seeing that work. Of course, there's greater involvement, greater stories as to why players transfer and reading the Lauren Betts. But, hey, thank you very much. Perfect fit. Now, this wasn't one of those games where anybody else dominated other than London Jones. Great to see her back in the starting lineup, hit 4 of her 8 threes, because I know when UCLA wins these big games against the South Carolinas, when they beat USC last year in Pauley Pavilion in front of a sellout crowd, London Jones was hitting her threes. Now, she doesn't need to hit 20, but if she's hitting 45% or better in big moments, 4 of 9, 4 of 8, that means the UCLA 3-point sharpshooter is hitting her shots. And the only reason why UCLA wasn't as dominant from downtown is because the bench went a combined 0 for 10, actually 0 for 11 from 3. So if we take away the 3-point numbers, the starting 5 went 9 of 18 from downtown. So when you mix in Barker, not a real 3-point shooter, Arnesalo, who hasn't proven it yet but has taken and made some, a cold stretch from Tamia Gardner, 0 for 5, and I'd like to get her going from downtown. I'd like to see Corey Close find a way to utilize her. I know I always go back and forth between Jones and Gardner, but having those 2 shooters on the floor, they bring different dynamics and add UCLA's offensive firepower and just literally take it through the roof and just launch it into outer space when they're scoring. When they're scoring from the outside, there's no way you can stop UCLA with Kiki Rice's driving ability and occasional 3-point makes. When you have rebounding machines like Gabriela Jaquez and Lauren Betts who can score, a post presence like Bess, a mid-range game like Duga Leach, I just don't see how teams are supposed to beat UCLA. They are ridiculously good. It's not like they shot ridiculously well, even though their best shooter did shoot well. They didn't turn it over. They weren't turnover free. They turned it over 12 times. They're not like the men who will force 30 turnovers. Rutgers only turned it over 8. But the thing is, with Lauren Betts in the paint, how UCLA tends to dominate is Rutgers has 30 points in the paint. UCLA is 42. That's 12 points. That adds up. Who made more threes? Well, UCLA made more threes. So when the Bruins can shoot better from the outside, they can own the paint, they can dominate the glass, and you don't crazily outweigh them at the free throw line, right? If they're not shooting 30 and UCLA shooting 10, how are you supposed to beat this UCLA team if they don't beat themselves? Beat a solid top 25 team Monday, beat the likes of Rutgers here, and then they go on and they're going to take on a Maryland team that has looked not like themselves this week. Maryland played Monday against Texas, got blown out by 40. Maryland coming into the week was a top 8 team. They're 16-3, 6-2 in Big Ten play. Only one true home loss, a very close game against USC. But the eyesore for UCLA is, hey, Maryland lost by 40, 38 points to Texas on a neutral court in New Jersey. They lost to Ohio State by 8. And remember, Ohio State just lost to Penn State, a team who UCLA struggled to beat at the Walter Pyramid in Long Beach, their neutral site home game, moved away from Pauley Pavilion. So this is now 3 straight games for UCLA played away from their home gym. And oh, by the way, that Northwestern game, that was postponed. So now I have to kind of think, wait a minute, how long has it been since UCLA played a legitimate home game? Like an actual home game. They have had some sneaky, tough stretches for Corey Close's bunch, all right? UCLA's last true home game this year has been against Michigan on New Year's Day when they beat the Wolverines 86-70. UCLA has not played a true home game in almost 3 weeks, and they're not going to play a true home game until they host Minnesota in the month of February. So you're going to think a month gone by, while they have been at home, the only time they're at home in their home area, campus has been vacated. There's a lot of greater things happening with the fire still burning and everything. Their one game was postponed. Their other game was moved to a new location. And that new location is literally shut down because it collapsed a little bit, the Walter Pyramid. You should go read about that. I mean, this is the number 1 team in the country, and they're a traveling show of greatness. Not many number 1 teams are going to go on the East Coast, dominate a couple of games, not have a home game, a true legitimate home game for a lot of these times. Like, that's just utter dominance they've been able to assert over Big Ten teams in a new conference with more travel against different opponents. Oh, let's bring South Carolina to Pauley, dominate them. Let's go play this team in San Francisco, play them. Oh, let's go play with our starting All-American point guard in Paris. Let's win that. Oh, for heck, even when we have all this travel, let's go to Hawaii and play 3 days in a row. They felt those struggles, and the Bruins have answered the bell to the tune of 19 straight wins. They know they underachieved last year. There's no reason they had no business losing to LSU in the Sweet 16. That was ridiculous. Ridiculous. I thought UCLA was Final Four good. They were a top 5, top 6 team. And losing the Sweet 16, that bracket, because you had Iowa and then LSU just to go play at UConn and then eventually maybe make it to South Carolina. No, the team to beat this year is the UCLA women, and they got to continue to play like it. Now, we're all going to wait, and hopefully they don't get caught napping on the end of a long East Coast swing against Maryland, who's lost a couple, so they're angry, they're hungry, they're prepared in front of what's supposed to be a revved-up home crowd. Maryland's played 2 straight road games this week. Maybe UCLA will be a little less tired than a Maryland team that went from New Jersey to Ohio, to Columbus, and then back to Maryland. While UCLA has been in New Jersey, and then Maryland. A little less travel, maybe a little less weary, and more focused. While Maryland should have the home crowd and the angst of losing 2 straight games. Bruins dominate against Rutgers. We've seen good things. Different players step up every game. It's Lauren Betts, and who's the next? Kiki Rice did struggle against Rutgers. Didn't shoot her best, but hit a couple of threes and had 10 assists. When your point guard has an assist to turnover ratio through the roof, unstoppable. When she can score and wants to score, the Bruins aren't going to lose. When Lauren Betts is shooting 12 of 16, you're not going to lose. And when she gets 7 extra possessions with offensive rebounding, UCLA isn't going to lose those games. You add in a little shooting, I'm excited. I'm excited for these next couple of months and the 2 matchups coming up against Maryland and USC. Because until then, you should like, comment, subscribe, download, review the show for Locked On UCLA. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Like it, comment your thoughts, and we'll talk more UCLA football. Lots of offers thrown out, some coaching changes, and new promotions. We'll talk about that in the next Locked On UCLA episode, and we'll react to UCLA playing and hopefully beating Washington in their first Big Ten West Coast road game of the new calendar year. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.